Hey guys, I'm Original Book Nerd, and tonight we're sitting down to chat with Jennifer Sucevic about her latest book, Never Your Girl, which is the last book in the Western Wildcats Hockey series, and it's Bridger and Holland's book. My most anticipated book for the series, and it was a good one. Jennifer, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. It's been Never Your Girl released a couple days ago, and it's just been kind of a whirlwind ever since, and very bittersweet. After 7 books, it kind of felt like I was ready to close it out, but then you're never quite ready to close it out because it always feels like there's people who are like, write me, write me. So I'm excited to start a new chapter with a totally different series.
So, Never Your Girl was probably your first true enemies to lovers romance.
That is exactly what I've said. Yes, it really is. Yes.
How was writing a true enemies to lovers where they hate each other?
It was, I really had to think about it a lot because most of the books I write, yes, I call them enemies to lovers, but they're not. He is usually after her and she is the one who's like, no, thank you, move it along. And so to have two people who did not want to be around each other was really kind of like the hardest part of it because it was like, okay, what are we doing here to get them together? So it's obviously going to have to be some kind of forced proximity. I mean, I could have done other things, but that is kind of what came to mind first. And then just getting them to even that point where they wanted to like let their walls down. Like that was really the challenge. And then getting them over that to where they really just wanted to be together. And no matter what was going on around them, they trusted each other. So that was, this was probably out of the whole series, the toughest one that I wrote because I really had to think about, you know, who was going to be the anonymous poster? What was the reasons behind that going to be? So I felt like throughout the series, because it's in the same world as the campus series, I wanted to bring those characters in so we could have some cameos from people who followed me from the campus series. And I wanted to sneak them in, a few places, not overdo it, but book 7, there is no one. I was like, I have enough to handle. I can't do anything more. I cannot bring any more. We had all of the couples, we had all of the girls and all the boys, and just kind of like, just trying to work everything and squeeze it into the book was just enough. I actually finished the book and I was like, well, damn, I forgot to add some more.
On the topic of no new characters, while we don't get any fresh faces, we do meet Bridger's cousin,
Yeah,
Steele,
yeah,
more in this book.
yes, yes.
And it is hinted that we will get Steele's book coming at some point, probably next. Can you give us any teasers for what his book is going to bring?
Well, you read You Never Your Girl, so I think I introduced his love interest there, and they were best friends, and he was already like wanting her, and she was with other people, and was oblivious to his love. I will confirm, hear to hear, that they will be book 1 in the new series, Make Me Yours. So I'm currently in that right now. It is mostly written. I'm still trying to figure, it's kind of like I'm one of those people who I write an outline and it's pretty detailed, and sometimes it's like 11, 15 pages so that when I go to write the book, I'm like, okay, chapter 1, here we are. But sometimes I'm really good about following that, and other times it's like there's something missing. And I think it's really because this is a new series. These are new people. In the first book, I am introducing kind of like the cast of characters. So it's kind of taken me like a little bit to find them and to really get my finger on the pulse of who Steele is. And I'm so usually get a cappuccino around 6:30, so he's bringing me my cappuccino. So I usually like when I was writing, once I get into the series, and especially like by book 2, book 3, I have a good idea who people are, but when you're starting something totally fresh, it's kind of like um, it's just taking me a little bit longer to figure out exactly their personalities, especially since I introduced them, but, then we're kind of going into the future, like by 8 years. Steele and Lila are no longer, 21, 22. They're more like 28, 29. So it's just kind of like, I think today I've been working on it a lot today and yesterday, and I feel really good about the changes I've made. But until I actually have like everything kind of perfected and then I go back and read it, I will not hard.
8 years. That's a big jump. And it makes me excited because that means we'll obviously probably see some familiar faces. So we have 8 years of life in between
Yes,
that we're gonna probably meet some, newer faces attached
yes,
to the old couples.
yes.
But going back to Never Your Girl, the anonymous blaster. Did you always know who it was going to be when you sat down to write this final book?
Nope, but I will say, when I figured out who it was, it really made sense to me. Like it was almost like, tumblers of a safe clicking into place. And it was like, to me, it was like so obvious. You know what I mean? Because I can go back to book 1 and see this person being unhappy, and kind of stirring things and causing like having drama with like some of their teammates. So when I look back at it, and sometimes I just think that's the way it's kind of like maybe it was always there, but I wasn't really cognizant of it. But when I take a step back, I mean, it was almost like I could say it was always intended to be that way because it just really like made the most sense and worked out like as if I had from day one when I had sat down and looked at the series. And I mean, to be honest, when I sat down to write Hate You Always, yes, I wanted it to be a series. Yes, I knew that there was going to be like 4, 5, 6 guys. And in the middle of that, but I really had no idea who they are, what their backstories were going to be. And I certainly wasn't thinking about like something that would stretch, like a thread that would stretch from book 1 to book 7. And I didn't even know there would be 7 books. But as I started, I had to actually take a day when I was writing that, and I was like, okay, I need to figure out who all these guys are. Like, what are their backstories? What do they look like? The girls who are going to be their love interest, what do they look like? Because once I was able to like envision them in my head, then everything really started to flow for me. So as I was sketching out, okay, Ford Hamilton, this is what his deal is. Karina, this is what her deal is. Wolf. When I did that first book, I knew that Karina and Ford would be the second book, and I knew what was the dynamic. And the same with Wolf and Fallon. I knew exactly what I wanted to do for them, and I had an idea of them in my head. And then as I was moving into like book 2 and book 3, then Colby kind of took form, and then Maverick, and then the rest of them. But I never really like when I was doing Hate You Always, it never like I don't, I think I have an anonymous post in that book, but it never really like I was like, yes, I am doing this very purposefully so that we have something to solve by the last book. So it just kind of worked out that way. So as I go into this series, I am trying to like really think about how I want to lay this out. And so I'm not like, I started writing like in 2015. And when I did that, I was pretty much pantstering, was not thinking about anything. So I have grown a lot to be able to take this series. It was like, even with the campus series, I thought I'd write campus player and that would be it. Like, I did not see myself as a series writer. I did not think I could do it. And then when and actually after I wrote campus player, I think I tried to do a second book and I couldn't do it. I felt like I had, thank you. I felt like I had, I don't know. I think it was like the pressure of like, okay, you already know this person and then there's this person and here's the setting and you need to make this work. And that, I don't know, it would get to me all the time. And I would have to like be like, okay, I'm gonna do something different. And actually I was trying to write, I had written King and Queen of Hawthorne Prep. And then I wanted to do Austin's book, who was the twin brother of Summer from that book. And I sat down and I tried to write it and I couldn't do it. And so I shelved it and I wrote Campus Player. And then that did really well. And I was like, okay, I had written into that because I usually will put like a sidekick, for both of them. And that was Braden and Sydney. And I was like, okay, I want to write them because they are the kind of characters I like. She's feisty. He's kind of like that golden retriever playboy who's funny. That's always my kryptonite. And I didn't even write that right away because I went back and wrote a different book. And I think it was The Boy Next Door because again, after The Girl Next Door, I knew I wanted to write The Boy Next Door and I couldn't do it. I tried to and the story would not come. So I shelved it. So for me to do, then I went back and I did Campus Heartthrob, and then the series just kind of flowed from there. I was able to do it. And then, and this series, then the Western Wildcats. Although I wrote Austin's story, Prince and Princess of Hawthorne Prep, before I delved into the Western Wildcats. But with that book, it was all like, there was a couple books where I was like, oh, I'm going to do Hayes's book. And I couldn't do it. It wouldn't come. And I think I actually tried to write Bridger's book because I wanted Maverick's book to be the last book. I wanted Juliet, who Brody and Natalie's daughter, to be the first book, and I thought it would be fun to end with their son being the last book, but that did not happen. So, and I'm glad because I think Maverick's book, I loved that book so much. And I just loved that story so much. And I feel like that story was like an easy flowed for me book, Bridger and Holland. And I think it really was because he was like such a different character for me. And so was she. Like, I don't think I've ever had two grumpies together.
Holland, kind of grumpiness aside, her attitude reminded me of Sadie with that come at me, bro, like I am not gonna back down, or the I will set fire to everything you own if you piss me off attitude.
Yeah.
And then Bridger was not the cinnamon roll
Oh,
hero that would roll
no.
over. It was very much I think you are behind every miserable thing in my life.
Yes. Yes, and that was really hard for me because that cinnamon roll, golden retriever, like funny, like a Colby and Ford, those are like I can't write like I would really honestly go into every book and be like, it's going to be like a Colby or a Ford. And that's not how they turn out. They're like, nope, that's not me. And they're like, this is me. And it's like, even as much as I wanted to like write Bridger like lighter, it's like I just couldn't do it. Like, his character was not ever going to be that lighter character. And I think that's kind of why I wanted to end with a different book. Like, if everything was perfect and I could do whatever I wanted, I would have probably tried to end that series. And I did. I was like, man, do I take this to book 8 so that I could do Steel and have it end kind of on that lighter note? But I just was like, after 7 books, as much as I would love to stay in this world, I feel like making like a change to older characters, where we can mix it up with like some different tropes would be fun.
I thought it was fitting because you were right. Book 1 and 2, we don't see as much as who is, sending these anonymous campus-wide alerts about Bridger. And
Right.
book, we get more and we see more of how they're affecting him. So I
Yes.
enjoyed
Yes.
how we end on Bridger's story. It sets, paves your way into this next series you're writing because there are some side characters that everyone is wanting now.
There is.
Before I dive into characters that are, jumping for their chance to have a story, I was curious. So, Never Your Girl has fake dating. And you did the fake dating in a way that they somehow pulled it over, and no one in their friend group, exception of Steele, figured it out. How did you manage that while writing? Because they're so close in each other's business, on both sides, because the girls have theirs and the boys obviously have theirs.
So I feel like, well, and you know what's funny is like when I go into a book, I'm always like, okay, like what are the tropes in this book? Like for Colby, obviously it was, a Vegas wedding and he falls first and secret identity or mistaken identity, however you want to say that. But so when I started thinking about Never Your Girl, it's like, okay, what tropes are we going to use? And I did not even think of fake dating. It was literally, I'm writing the scene as we are walking into the house, and Willow is like, what are you doing here with him? And it was like, what is he doing here? Like, how is she going to live in this house and no one's going to know about it? And that's where it was like, oh, fake dating, you know? So, and it was also what I liked is that he could be like with him because of everything that was happening with his father and then the text, he had like a more somber personality. But with her, he just loved poking at her, and that kind of brought like more of a lightness to him and lightened him up. And I loved that. So obviously, they go up to the room. She's pretty upset with him. And, you know, they go to bed for the night and he comes down the next morning and all his friends are there. They're like,
That was one of my favorite scenes.
what's going on here? Is this a cry for help? Blink if you are like being wrong. Because they were all like, what the hell? You know? And Steele, yes, Steele knew about it. He thought like at that point it was hilarious, that, now he's supposedly dating the girl he hates. But I think all of his friends were just kind of like, if you're telling us that you had a one night stand with her and you've got like these feelings still that you're trying to work out, we're going to support you. If you tell us you're okay, we will support this. And I love that because that is like that found family and, Bridger's father sucks and his mom's gone, but he's got this group of boys who have his back and really are concerned about his welfare. And Holland, like Willow, yes, Willow was totally did not understand this and felt a little hurt that, she had been excluded from this, and that's totally normal. But, I think Willow was still, even towards the beginning of the book, a little more standoffish with the girls. She still had her walls up, was hiding things, wasn't totally giving, telling everybody what's going on in her life. And she, because of everything that has happened, is a more private person. And I think Bridger is too, where like a Colby or a Ford is going to tell you everything. Bridger was like a little more secretive about, some of the things that were obviously that was going on in his life because, you know, while they knew his friends, his teammates knew that, his dad was an ass, they did not know like the full extent of it. Only Steele really knew.
And of course, his teammates were like, we'll support you, but blink if you need help.
And that was Ford.
Because there was like, and you threw it in throughout the whole book after they did the initial intervention where they were like, are you okay? And it just made me laugh every time one of them were like, are you sure that you're like doing okay? Like, you're not cracking under all of this pressure?"
Right. Right. Because, things are happening, like he's not skating as well, performing on the ice as well as he wants to. The person who seems to be wanting to take his spot is getting it on there and he's getting pushed off. So, I mean, there was like a lot of pressure that was mounting on him.
And, of course, Holland's not making it easier on him. On the fake dating aspect, though, so we find out we're enough in where I might have some questions that begin to get a little spoilery.
Okay.
So this is a warning for anyone who watches this after it goes live. If you haven't finished or you don't want to be spoiled yet, maybe don't listen to the rest. But with Holland and Bridger, yes, they fake date and they hate each other, but there's an underlying bond between them that they don't consciously know, and that is they are pen pals, chat pals,
Yes.
and
Yes.
they shared some deep stuff.
Yes.
How were you able to balance the level that they share as they begin to kind of become closer with the whole, not cheating, but that feeling that they're
Yes. Yes. And I think you see them struggle with that. Both of them feel like once they get in and they start to have feelings for the other person, I think like the chat parts that you see that are like every 5 chapters, kind of like the fluffier chats, that are kind of more funny and that's like the stuff from like the beginning, like when they first kind of like start going back and forth. And then you have the ones that come in the book, and how they check on each other and just make sure they're doing okay. And I think it is easier to tell a stranger online some of the real things that are happening in your life than it is to tell people who are your friends in your real life, because like your friends are going to want to do something about it and that might not be possible. So just talking about it and getting it out, and that's what they become for each other. Holland has a flaky mom who loves her, but is, more like the child in the relationship than Holland has taken on more of that parent role. So, she feels kind of like weighted down by all the responsibility she has, and then earning money because she's obviously not getting money from her mom to go to school, to go to college, so she's the one having to do it all. So balancing that, balancing her studies, so she has a lot of pressure. So I think she feels the same way in that she Willow, her best friend and her roommate, doesn't even know she has this job, and so it's nice to talk to someone who you can just be honest with. You can strip away everything. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to, he's like the president of the university's son. So, he can't just tell anybody anything. But I love that they had this relationship going and they don't know it. And then towards when they start to really open up to each other as Holland and Bridger, they each struggle with feeling guilty. Not that they have ever, said, we're going to be together. Let's meet and let's start a real relationship. That is never really, they know what that relationship is, even though they sometimes joke around and like, if you need someone, I'm that ride or die. So that's when I say, like, I could not bring other people into this book because it was like managing their story, like, literally took on a life of its own. And I just felt like there were so many layers to it that I had to really think at each point, where are they with this? They're cold as ice and fragile like a bomb. Where are they with Alan and Bridger? and then all the other kind of story stuff that's moving in in the background, and the whole reason that they're together. Yeah, it was exhausting. I think Colby's book, like that was like such a nice light book, and it was easy and it was fun, and I really like love that. And this was not like, I'm really proud of this book because how it turned out, how it came together at the end, I love. But it was like managing it all and making sure I'm thinking about all of the different, things that need to be like tied up, especially being like the end of the series. It was just like a lot. I feel like I needed to have one of those big boards and pins everywhere to make sure, and notes and like strings like attaching everything, so I could make sure I was hitting everything the way I should. And I actually had a beta who I let read, and I normally don't do that. I'm not secretive about it, maybe a little secretive about it, but it's more like I really love people to read something when it's totally polished, and that means going through editing, it means going through proofing, that it is as perfect as I can make it. So to have someone read it when it had not even been edited was like, but she was like, I really want to see, like, I would love to see, and maybe more of the girls and Holland at the end, really Holland thinking about like that these girls are so accepting of her, and she, never had that, and she feels really validated by them. And so I actually like lengthened that out a little bit, and I'm glad I did, because I think she's right. When I'm writing this book, I am in the woods and I cannot see anything. And, to have someone else come and look at it and say, that maybe we need to like expand a little bit was helpful. So especially again, being the end of the series, it's kind of like I wanted to make sure I touched on everyone, that everyone was there, that this was like, their big goodbye. Like we will see them, some of them in the books that come later, but it felt important to like really wrap things up for this book. So hope I did that. And I was sad, at the end of the book, that last, not the last chapter, but when they're in slap shots,
Mm.
you know, and Bridger, everyone. And again, when I did the first book, and I had on her bucket list, because it seemed like a good bucket list item to have her sing karaoke, and then Ryder
That was
takes
a
her up there and they sing together. And then I did not realize at that point that I would do that throughout the whole series, and even when I did it with Ford and Karina. Like that just fit, like Karina singing to him like that, and she's like a showman. So she made this really sexy. And then even at that point, I didn't know that I would have everyone do that. But as the books went on, it just seemed like, and then, with Colby and Britt, it was like, she's a singer. Of course she's going to sing, that seemed like the perfect. So it was like, by the time I got to that point, and then I think Wolf obviously sang to Fallon, it was like, okay, so this is something we're going to do like throughout the whole book. So to have him sing and have everybody there and kind of just looking at all, these guys that he came in as a freshman with, and now they're all graduating and moving on with their lives. It felt like a poignant moment.
one that scene is a great scene. I think some of my favorite moments though were actually in those text chains when they were bashing on each other and they had no clue. When she was complaining about this thorn in her side, and he would be like, "You want me to go beat him up?" And
Yeah, it just seemed really ironic.
or like he would complain, and she'd be like, "Well," and the girl version of, "Well, do you want me to go beat them up?" And I was just like, little do they know
Yes,
that it's never
yes.
so.
Well, and it's like the book like was a little bit of it because it was hate, So it was like, it felt like when I could infuse some humor and just lighten things up, and Howland was like no nonsense, like she was just like, she was not going to be like Karina or someone who was just a little more like, even though they have some similarities. Holland was just like, she was going to tell you the way it is. And so I think it was really fun to have him needling her, and especially like in the library with the text messages from her mother. Like her mother is like, you know what I mean? Her mother is such a flake, but like a lovable flake, but you know what I mean? She's trying to set her up with like her motorcycle boyfriends, like club friends. It was like, and then she's like, "You're so judgy, Alan."
That was so my favorite scene was actually the dinner scene between the mom and her boyfriend, and then Holland and Bridger. Because it just showed so much about how they grew.
Yes,
But then even as they started, developing feelings, they just could not help but needle one
yes,
another.
yes,
It
yes.
was like
I know, and I loved that. I loved that, she could give as good as she could get. You know what I mean? He loved to needle her and she loved to needle him right back. So it was just, and their dynamic, they just had like so much chemistry.
so you've mentioned their story took a world of its own kind of within this series. I personally enjoyed how the side characters, while they were still there, their story was very much Holland and Bridger.
Yes.
Whereas I do like how you added the extension for Holland finding, you know, f- female friends who she had trust with by the end. I did really like how it wasn't as side character heavy, maybe, as the first
Yes.
books. I
Yeah.
felt their story stood, on its own with everything going on. It also, like, Bridger was a very different character than the first six.
He
So,
was.
um, I don't know how well he would have done with everyone inserting their 2 cents about.
Well, and again, while his teammates are very important to him, I just think like things had been piling on, piling on, piling on. And I think when that happens, like people kind of tend to take a step back and isolate a little bit. You know what I mean? Because you're trying to deal with all this stuff happening. And I think I would have honestly really loved to write like more stuff happening, but their story was like so big that it was like, and there was so much going on with it that it was hard. Like it would, like, I think people coming in would have, like, it's always a balance. You write a series and you want like people read it because it's like that found family and they want to see the characters popping up in the other books. But you don't want the other characters to take over the book, and I think I can tend to sometimes, if I'm not thinking about it, make it more like Holland and Bridger, where they're there, but this is the story. And I feel like Colby and Britt were maybe a little bit like that because their story, like Britt was an outcast, not an outcast, but an outsider to the girl group, like in the beginning. So she was more like self-contained dealing with what was going on. And I feel like Bridger and because they had all these other stuff going on, it was just like really hard to also have everything else. And I think people, it would have like distracted from like their story if I had had like too much going on with them. It's always like a balance. And again, like when you're writing it, you don't necessarily see what, like, is there a balance? Is it too much? Is it too little? Like, what do I need to do? Like, like the editor I had for the first couple books would actually say, you need to like add more. It's very them heavy. Like, but it's their story and it's about them.
I think for the last book because they're interconnected standalones, like you said, you don't have to read them in order.
No.
As someone who always reads in order, though, if I were to pick up this book, it would make me want to read the others, but I wouldn't be confused about, events because it's very Holland and Bridger with teasers of, the six other couples, which I really liked. But of course, I'm always going to read all the books in order anyway. So, 2 cents. For Never Your Girl, this was a little bit different in the realm of hockey romance in college because normally the guy, his goal is to get to the NHL and play professional hockey. In this book, you made Bridger right away say, I'm not playing hockey
Yes.
after college.
Yes.
Did you always know he was going to, you know, put his skates and retire going into this series, or did that kind of develop as you got more into his story?
Okay, we'll just start out first with, when you're writing college romance and it's hockey, I mean, I guess that's the ironic part is the guys who are playing college hockey, they're not going to, because those guys are like either playing juniors or they're going, to the professionals. They're getting drafted. So, like most and that is like something like my husband is like big sports. So I can sit down and I can like talk to him like, is this even possible? Because if you tell me it's possible, then we can do it. If you're like, that's never going to happen, then I have a problem. So, you know, the guys who are playing like, for the Big Ten schools, they're not going, they weren't picked up. It's actually really rare for that to happen. So, like, even when I started to think about Ryder, yes, why would he go to college and play and not go to juniors? So it was kind of like, well, his dad is Brody and Brody wants him to have that experience. And even though it's like not typical, that's how we rolled with that. So, I tried to take a couple of the guys and say, they're not going to play. They know that this is the end for them. They have other things that they're going to do. Bridger was one of them, and Ford was the other.
Mhm.
Ford went to work for his father. Ford did not go on to play professional hockey. Wolf did, Maverick did, Hayes. So I felt like that was kind of like pushing the limit and the envelope of it. So yes, I kind of knew that Bridger was not going to be playing, and I was okay with that because I just thought it just adds like the realism to it, because most of them aren't going to do that. So yes, I did know that he was getting a business degree and he was, going to be going doing something like that.
On to the fun questions. These are my favorite questions, and you're probably going to hate me after I ask them.
No, let me get my drink of cappuccino.
In Never Your Girl, did you have a favorite moment between Holland and Bridger while writing?
You know what? The moments I'm trying to think if there is really just one. I have to say that like the funny moments between them, like I loved that first interaction with them where they're walking to class. I just love how she was like, you think that, you know, sleeping with you one time it was enough to ruin me and I've been all boo-hoo, I can't have you, and the way he was like, kind of blushed a little bit at the step down. I really loved that scene. And I loved the scene in the library where he steals her phone and is answering the mom behalf for him. I think I really love to write like humor. Like I'm not rom-com. I mean, I think there's a few that border rom-commy, but I love when I can get into that flow of writing a book that is funny and the characters just have this chemistry where there's this back and forth. That's my favorite. So I think those two scenes, enjoyed writing them. And I'm sure that there's more. And I loved when they started to get close. Like, and I'm trying to think if it's like when she has that bad dream and he's there to comfort her and he's kind of like seeing her like this does something to him, because when she's sleeping, she's so much more vulnerable than like the protective armor she wears. I really love that scene. And when they walk into the house and Willow questions what they're even doing, that was, I actually really, really love when he's like something like, well, we've got to go upstairs now to, and she's like, talk. And it's like, sure, after. That like cracked me up. So whenever I can crack myself up is like my funny moments.
That scene just, I was like, oh my God, this is a facepalm moment.
And then she hits him when they get in the room. She punches him in the gut. I love that. I really loved how strong she was. And I love that she was a fighter and, that she was ride or die for Willow. You know what I mean? She was really protective. I loved her character, but she was a really different character for me to write. They both were.
Did you have any moments that just kind of made your heart hurt between them while writing?
Well, obviously, any interaction between Bridger and his father, those were kind of sucked. And I felt, I felt bad for him. And I think when she witnesses, and she's behind something, so she doesn't see it happen, but she hears it happen. And just like, I think, like for her, that's a major turning point. She already had one interaction with his father when they meet on campus. So she already kind of made that comment, oh, he's a big squishy teddy bear, which is the opposite of what, Richard or Dick is. And so when she witnesses what happens in the locker room, and then she knows, like, because he's like, no one wants someone to witness like such a moment. And she's almost thinks to herself, maybe I should leave. He would probably want me to leave. And we never talk about this. And I pretend it didn't happen, but she doesn't. She goes to him because she's concerned. And I really just like that to me is like a really major turning point, you know, and then you get some schmexy times in the shower, but she really wants to make him feel better. And then they go to the diner that, Wolf and Fallon started going to. So then everyone went to, and, they have like a moment, where they kind of like aren't their prickly selves to one another. And that is really when things start to change for them. I love that as a turning point, and it made me feel like these two were like they're not perfect for everybody, but they're perfect for each other.
And I hope this is in this book, but at the diner, don't they order the same thing?
Yes.
I was like, I am 99.9% sure that they had the exact same order at the diner, and their waitress was like, what's going on?
But she's like, oh, you two are so adorable. And they're like, we're not adorable.
I have a question, and this is a spoiler question too for anyone still watching. We find out the anonymous rumor kind I don't want to call it Gossip Girl because I know who it is now. But we find out who has been sending these anonymous
Poster.
posts about Bridger in this book. And we learn a familiar link to Bridger and his father that I did not see coming.
Yes.
I have been able to pick up twists that you throw at me, but this is one I never could have guessed. And the only I guessed right at the end when he had the confrontation with Fallon, or I mean with Holland.
Yes.
And then right after it happened, of course, he announced what was going on and who he was. But like right before, I was like, I'm getting this feeling that she's about to just do something I'm not gonna like. We're not gonna directly name him. I do have some questions though about him.
Okay.
And we've already discussed, you kind of, once you started writing their story, knew who it was going to be, and it just kind of snowballed from there.
Yes.
But when the time came to reveal him, was the way you had him approach Holland always going to be how he came out and how she kind of started putting that final piece together.
When I was writing the draft, it's kind of like my drafts are like, and then this happens, and then this happens, and as it's like playing in my head like a movie, I am seeing like how this all is playing out. And just like with the fake dating, I had no idea they were going to fake date until we really got to the house. And it was like, yeah, why is she here? This makes no sense. And then it was like, well, that is the reason, you know what I mean? And then it just kind of like went from there. And it really like was perfect. And that is how we got like to that. That was as I'm writing him and I'm writing the relationship and, he has feelings for Holland and Holland has, you know, it was like that first interaction with him and Holland at Slap Shots as she's leaving to go to her job and he's like, "You're leaving? I'll come with you. We can chill." And she's like, she's very like, "No, I have a date. It's with my pillow. Goodbye." She is not going to be one of those girls who like is apologetic for not having interest. You know what I mean? She was when she realized that he was interested in her. She's like, "I don't feel that way. I thought we were friends. I just want to be friends. It doesn't even matter if I was with this other person. I don't feel that way about you." And I really liked that about her characters, that she's very forthright. She's not going to dance around anything and try to spare someone's feelings. And so when he pulls her, when he pulls her on campus and they're talking on campus and then Bridger sees them and his cousin is there and his cousin is like, "Whoa, you know, you
Steve,
can't trust her. You're sleeping with the enemy."
Steve was like the devil and the angel in one character.
That's,
He was
he
like, "I will
was
forgive you 100%." And then he was also like, "But there's something I don't like about her.
right,
Open your eyes."
right,
And I was
right.
like, "Steele, you're just upset that you can't make your move on your girl."
Maybe so. Maybe he was just,
Maybe you're
frustrated. But I think, Steele knows everything that's going on. Steele like knows about his dad and what a jerk he is, and he knows like how much like Bridger doesn't like share with everybody. Like he has a tight circle, and especially with all the anonymous tests, he doesn't know who he can trust. So he tightens up that circle until it's like really a circle of one with his cousin, you know, trying to figure out who's behind this. How would they know about like him getting like not benched, but kind of taken off the ice and someone else put in if they weren't there at practice or if they weren't getting information from teammates, something. It's like I think Steele, like as much as he wants his first, kind of like Holland, where her first instinct is to protect Willow. Steele, I think, was that for Bridger. He knows just how much everything is weighing on him and that he doesn't want to see him crack under the pressure of everything. And he knows that every time one of these texts comes out, he gets like, reamed from his father. So he is just trying to be protective. And I think when they first start fake dating, he just thinks it's hilarious, that Bridger has now brought this girl who he hates into his bed in his house. But as it goes, and as Bridger is like, "No, I don't think it's her. I trust her. I really think it's, she's being truthful with me." And he's like, "Dude, open your eyes." I don't think she's what she says she is. I think she's hiding stuff, and then when he sees them together, it just fuels all his doubts. Here he was making the step to really open up and trust Holland, and he sees her with, that person who's like riding him and making life also difficult. And then it just throws him back into, can I trust her? I want to trust her. Can I trust her?
On the topic of trust is a big element with Holland and Bridger.
Yes.
And this anonymous blaster, when he approaches Holland and it all comes out, the one thing he says or asks of her is, please don't tell him yet. I will tell him on my own.
Yeah.
Therefore, breaching this very tenuous trust they have built,
Yes.
and the very rare trust Bridger gives out.
Yes.
How did you balance Bridger's reaction with it when he does find out everything going on, but doing it in a way where you could still have him come back to her and realize, I may have overreacted a little bit. Let's figure out how we can go from here.
Well, and the one thing that person says to her when she says, I'm going to tell him, he's like, we're like in playoffs. You're going to tell him this? And during playoffs, he's already not staying, well, you're going to go and mess this up. And so that weighs on her, you know. I think she was just happy because how do you go to someone and be like, oh, by the by, you have all this and your father's this? And so I think even she needed to just like think about it. What she did secure was that he wasn't going to be blasting any more information. And so I think for the moment, while she thought about it, that was enough. She knows what's going on and she wants him to know. And yeah, that was a hard balance. It was because I didn't want her to be the bad guy, and so I think when Steele confronts her, then, I mean, first, obviously, if you go back, Bridger shows up at her work and because they haven't talked and Steele was like, what was her response? Why? What was she doing with him? And he's like, I don't know. I didn't ask. And he's like messed up in the head. And, he goes and finds her at work, after they have their moment, um, you know, he brings it up that he feels he can't trust her and she like usually when he says that to her, she's pretty hurt because, you know, Holland has a lot of pride and she was never the poster. So, she wants him to trust her. And then she knows this information and it's like this war within her. She wants to tell him, but she doesn't want to hurt him. So that was a really tough how to handle that. Yeah, that wasn't easy, but I do like that after Steele confronts her, she is like, we're done. I am going to go and take care of this.
I have one more question about this anonymous poster. And this is one that I'm very curious about, and you can probably know that it's coming. But, and I will spoil a little, it's not going to give it away because I'm not going to name who it is, but we learned that the anonymous poster is Bridger's half-brother. And you reveal it in a way that Bridger ends up being very accepting towards him and is like, you could have just came to me. We're family. I would have, like, you got the better end of the stick from where Bridger is sitting. Will we get this guy's story down the pipeline at some point?
You are not the first to ask. I'm not going to say no. He is not, and I kind of played with it. I guess my biggest fear is like that people will not want to read his story, even if it's like eight 8 years in the future, 10 years in the future. Will they hold that against him for what he did throughout this whole series? That's my question.
Well, obviously, I'm not holding it against him. I found the way the team embraces him after Bridger brings to light what was going on to be enough for me to now want him to get his happily ever after. The question is, though, is he going to be a professional hockey player? Or is he going to just be with someone who is in the realm of sport?
That is an excellent question. Stand out. And I am not ruling out that he could be one of them. And you're right. He could come as a coach. He could come as an assistant coach. Maybe he did go to the NHL. I am like, that is like one of those where I'm gonna kind of see how this series goes and maybe think about him because I do love to bring in, people that we already are familiar with, because I think that just kind of, especially when it's so far in the future, we've got a little bit of a redemption arc, we've got familiar faces. I'm totally not ruling that out, but the first, like, I think 4 to 5 books, I already kind of know. I already have, like, I've already thought about who these couples are and even the order that they're going to come in, because I didn't even have that, like, going into the other series, Western Wildcats. I was just kind of like, I knew who the first three were going to be, and then it was going to be like, who's after that? So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'm not against it. I think it would be an interesting he would be interesting. Definitely interesting. And I feel like he was such like the bad guy throughout this whole series. And then at the end, you kind of find out like what he was struggling with and maybe why he was unhappy. And I really love how Bridger was so accepting of it. And I think like really the reason for that is because he really doesn't have, other than Steele, there is really no one else. So for him to now be able to call someone else like brother or family, like I think he just really embraced that. And I love that, because he's not really well liked on the team, that Bridger really like pulls him in and is like, he's my brother, give him another shot.
The question becomes, is what he did to Bridger worse than what Willow's twin does to her boyfriend? You know? Because Willow's brother sleeps with her now boyfriend's ex-girlfriend while they're iffy. So
They did.
which one's worse?
They
You could
did.
argue that her brother did something more unforgivable than
But I will say, I get so many requests for River.
one
They
of them.
are willing to forgive River.
I am forgiving of River as long as we don't get her with River.
And you know what? When I first started kind of thinking about it, I was like, they were together. They could be together. And someone was like, no,
I I could even do it if you bring her trying to get back with him,
no, nope.
just as long as he doesn't end with her.
I have someone else earmarked for him, and I think River will be the second book in the series. And I think that, and you have to remember again, it is 8 years in the future. So, we've kind of grown up and we're adults. Might
You
be
know
a
what?
single parent. There is single parents in there. There's a nanny in there. There's an age gap in there. Those are all things that, I couldn't really do. So it's kind of exciting.
You know what's coming now that we're entering the realm of what is to come. And at any time, you can tell me my theory is too far-fetched, or throw something back at me if you want to know my opinion.
Okay.
But, so a theory that I have run across, this relates to River, perfect segue. And I think I might have talked to you about this before. So it might have been someone saying that they had this theory after I gave them the brilliant idea to have. But Willow and Maverick, her book was central on her chronic illness and Maverick getting over his fear of losing someone close to him
Yes.
with a chronic illness. Whereas River is too protective.
Yes.
My theory should be, one, I think it should be a single mom. But I also think it should be a single parent with a child of a chronic illness, and he has to learn how to take take that step back. And you said it's 8 or 9 years in the future. Does this man learn how to take a step back even that far into the future?
I do not have, I really just have, I will tell you for River, it is a single mom. And I will also say it is one of his teammates' exes.
The man doesn't learn.
Who was his very good friend. So,
Not Bridger. I mean, no, not.
no. And the person who is this particular person, he's just a playboy. He's a playboy. They were never married. They do have a child together, and he's just living his best life with his new gal. So River was his friend. They were teammates, but he's always had a soft spot for this woman, and especially with her daughter. So it sets up that this woman really wants nothing to do with him because he was is friends, and feels like he's maybe just trying to find out details for his friend instead. So she wants nothing to do with him.
Is this a completely new
Yes.
face? Okay.
Yes. The woman will be a new face. Yep.
Okay.
But we will meet her in the first book.
In book one.
In book one.
My next one is 𝑨𝒕𝒉 and Lila. I think you're gonna do a best friends, two enemies, to one night stand, to frenemy, because Steele just does not have the balls right now to ask
He
best
does
friend.
not.
So
He does
something
not.
drastic needs to happen
Yes. Yes.
for that to happen. And I don't think it's going to be in the realm of a oops Vegas wedding.
Nope, it is not.
I do see that pathway of best friends to not friends at all, to the accidental one night stand, to the kind of frenemies again situation. But I don't know. I've tried not to think too much because friends to lovers is a hard trope to theorize.
It is so hard, and that's why I don't do much of it. So yes, and that was where I had to really, here's what I will say. They never become enemies. Not at all. I will say she's dating someone else when it starts, and we're gonna have some forced proximity, and that is all I will say. But yes, that is like the hard part, is having that tension. So I think that's why I kind of had to, like, I got to like this week and I was like, yep, I'm ripping it apart. I'm ripping it apart and moving some things around. So creating that tension, and I think I finally did it. So it's kind of like I'm in a little bit of a rewrite right now, but I'm really happy with the way it's going. So, and what I have introduced, I think works really well, especially for like the friends to lovers and just what she needs, what she wants. So I will leave it at that.
I think my next theory is out there. And it's out there because I don't know if we've met any of the characters past book 2 yet. But I think you'll have the single dad nanny romance, but the nanny is the coach's daughter.
Nope.
Wah. Age gap coach's daughter trope, because that one works really well.
So I think, I don't remember exactly. I can't think. So we will have, we've already said River's getting a book. Steele is getting a book. Oliver Van Doren is getting a book. And when we have Oliver Van Doren come, his sister will come. Kaya. She will be the nanny book.
That just brings so much options.
I know. And it will be age gap.
Man, Kaya.
Because she's definitely younger, and she is like the younger sister of a teammate. So gonna have lots of secrets. And obviously this hockey player, is one we have not met yet. So he will be a new face, but I have paired him with an old, like someone we met.
I do have a quick question before I do any more theories, partly because I don't want to be completely wrong and embarrass myself, because I like to be close to theories. The Western Wildcats, all of your series are loosely interconnected in the same set universe, correct?
Yes.
So the football series with Rowan, timeline-wise, are they on the same age as parents in the Western Wildcats? Or are they the age of this series?
They are the age of the hockey series. So campus series and the Western Wildcats series, same. They are at the same age. So, and then you have the parent books were Hate to Love You, Just Friends, and The Breakup Plan. Those were like three of the parent books. I don't have any other, like, those are kind of like the only loosely related stuff that I have. So this new series, the Chicago Railers, will be in the future a little bit. I have not thought if I'm going to, because I have really used my hockey people. So my standalone hockey books were the parents of the Western Wildcats. I don't know if I'm going
What
to
my
bring.
question was coming to be. Um, I think so King of Campus, where we also get kind of like the Twitter updates or tweet
Yes,
updates. They're the same age as the boys in Western Wildcats.
yeah, yes. I mean, because that series is just totally unrelated. They could be parents for some of these newer ones because those really are like my OG book.
And I give this theory to you every time in some way because I just really love King of Campus.
I do too. And if I could write that book over and over and over again, I would write that book because that book, like, there was just something about that book. Not every book is like, even though you want it to be special, you think about all the ways you can make it special. There are just some books that are really special, and that was just one of them. I mean, even today, 9 years later, that book, like, is one of my bestseller books.
One of my theories. So there is a few characters that are introduced, I think in book 3 or 4, that are
Yeah,
siblings that we
yeah,
don't get.
Claire and Callum and Liam.
My theory is that one of the sisters ends up being paired with one of the hockey players. Only because I really want to see some of my favorite characters come back
I
again.
know. Well, Claire was with JT, and then it was Liam who was with Gia, and then Cullum. And I get lots of questions. Like, if there's probably three or four different couples that I continually get emails about, and they're like, "Did I miss this book? Did you write this book? Are you gonna write this book?" And it's Olivia and Noah from Love to Hate You, who were with Daisy and Carter. I wanted to write their book. I just got I want to write their book. Their book is probably within like one of the top books. Like, if I can finally get some time to actually like sneak in a book, which I thought before I ripped this book apart, I really was like, okay, I have a month. I am going to try to like get something moving for this couple because so many people want them, and I want to like give that to that book. I want there to be like Love to Hate You, and then something with Daisy's cousin Noah and Olivia. And I get a lot of questions about Cullum from One Night Stand, and then he reappears in his sister's book, Claire and JT's book, If You Were Mine. He appears there, and people want his book. And I have thought he had quit football and was working like doing auto stuff. And that just really threw me. It was like, what am I supposed to do with this now? So
Have
I
an
don't know.
athlete. Yes,
He has to have something. Or
but
maybe he goes and coaches.
with that cast of characters, it's not out of the realm that he'll meet a female athlete.
No, he could. So he is another one that people ask me about, as they do Duke and Everly.
Hawthorne
from
Prep.
the Hawthorne Prep series. I get lots of questions about them as well. And then there is Colton and Brinley from Just Friends. But I already have a Colton, so I kind of shot myself in the foot with that by not realizing I had a Colton when I wrote The Boy Next Door, who is Colton. So it's kind of like those are the couples that I continually get asked, like, am I going to write those books? And I want to write those books. So I just have to like carve out the time. But right now it's not happening right now. I wanted it to, and I was just like, now that I'm ripping this book apart, like, it's like, nope, not happening now. I am not a fast writer. Like there's people who can write like put out 4 to 5 books a year. Like if I put out 3 books and a novella, that is like where it's really hard for me. So I'm hoping that like my husband has just retired. So I'm hoping that gives me more time to work on my writing and these stories that I still want to. So I'm hoping that I can like maybe move a little faster, but I don't know. Maybe once I get into this series and I kind of have everyone down, like right now, it's like I'm still trying to get to know them. So it's harder, because everything is new, It's like a new bar. It's a new, you know what I mean? Like
Gotta have
a
to
new
hang out.
bakery. We've got a bakery this time. So it's just like when you're creating that world, it is just like so much that has to be like so many details that you just want to nail and get right. And so I'm still working on that. So maybe once I'm a couple books into this series, I can like be like, okay, I got this. Now I can do a side project.
My next theory was that the king of campus children would be one of them would be paired with one of these new series.
Well, and I'm not saying no. Think sometimes and I have thought about it. In fact, I've thought about like going back. And even like Lexi and Dylan never got a story because when King of Campus opens, they are together. And in that book, they go through a little something like a pregnancy scare and they break up
That is
and
I've been anxiously waiting for.
they are another one. So it's like, and I also just am not sure if I want to cross like hockey with football. Do you know what I mean? Because I think like there are people who will read both.
Really great if you have hockey playing children for a football star.
Well, and that's it. Like, you know, it's do I want to, or like after I do this next series, am I going to stay with hockey? I don't know, because I've really gone back and forth. In fact, before the Western Wildcats, I had more hockey books than I had, or no, I had more football books than I had hockey books. So sometimes I get a little like I just want to change things up and I want to like I used to kind of go back and forth and I don't know what I'll do after this next series. I might bounce back to football. And if I bounce back to football, then I definitely feel like I will either just start a 2.0 series and it would be with the Barnett Bulldogs. It would be that one because there I just have so many like I could fill in. There's like 2 books right there I can fill in before even starting kid books.
My next theory, now that I know Oliver is going to be one of these characters, my next theory was hockey male, professional hockey female, having to share rink space. One of my favorite tropes. And I don't, Oliver's still kind of mysterious because he's not quite as big of I mean, Kai is the one that I remember when I think of their book.
Yes.
Not to say
And
Oliver's not there, but Kaya was the Spitfire.
she was the Spitfire and I think Oliver was kind of like that teen who was, surly. He had his own kind of issues he was dealing with because, he was with his single mom and he in that in between space where you're not a kid, but you're not an adult. And, like his brother Hayes was worried like he'd fallen with a bad crowd. So he needed to be working and giving money to his mom so that Oliver and his other brother could stay in, um, Theo could stay in hockey. So we just see him as a kid, just like Kaya. We just see him as a kid in those books. So he will honestly be like a younger player. He's going to be kind of like that, probably playboy. I don't totally have it down, but like there are some guys on the team. And I will tell you, okay, so one of the other characters that we will have is Colby McNichols has brothers who also play
Yes.
hockey, and one of them will be also on that team. So you have like, Steele, who's going to be like that older, and then you have like the goalie who will be with Kaya. He's going to be even older, more of a curmudgeon. And then you have like
Totally.
these younger guys who are going to be like Oliver and Colby's brother Knox. So they're the ones who are going to be causing trouble. So there might be a PR woman involved. And you will see her in book one because those two already are getting into it, which she was meant for Oliver, but for some reason I started writing Knox in there and I'm like, I can't change it now. They have such good chemistry. She's not going to have that chemistry with Oliver, so we're stuck. Now it's not.
My next theory, this is also one that's a little out there, but it's a surprise child where he doesn't realize he has a kid. So kind of like second chance, kind
Yes.
of not. I don't think it would be in one of the ones you've said so far,
No.
but
No.
that is one that I've had thoughts on.
See, and I think like back in my earlier days at writing was like I wrote what I wanted to write. I wasn't really thinking about reader expectations or how are readers going to react to that. But now, like, I feel that, and so, like, when I think about that person we were mentioning from Never Your Girl, it's like, well, how will readers react to that? Will they be okay
I
with
was
him,
trying to hint at.
and the same thing with River. Like I was thinking, oh, how fun would that be? Like my original thought was, how fun would it be to have her come back? And the one person I talked to was like, absolutely not. And I was like, okay. So it's like now that is kind of like, and I know like I personally love Secret Kid. I
Me too.
love it. I eat that up for breakfast. Um, but I know some people don't like it because you have to have a really good reason why you kept this child a secret.
I think it would be perfect for he who has yet. And this is one I will expand on. I think it would be perfect for him because you could do it where it happens shortly after everything is revealed, when he kind of has that spiral at the end where he doesn't feel like he's gonna have a brother. Once everything comes out. And then you meet said child 7 years later, 8 years later, and he's now, 8 or 9,
Yeah.
and he's gonna be thrown back into the, I don't know. I think it would be good. It's a redemption
That is a really good idea.
arc. He would have to lean on his half brother. We would, of course, get Holland super like, you got to do right by this kid. But I don't know. My ideas sometimes go
No,
they're
no, I actually really do like that. So
one of my favorite tropes.
I love it too.
It's done right. It's one of my favorite tropes. It can be done sometimes where I end up not liking it. Very, very.
See, and that's like I always like to give myself the best chance for things.
I usually don't like it in darker romance because of the reason behind it.
Yeah.
But in a sports romance, normally the reason behind it is, I don't want my child to have fame. Whereas in this one, I would think it would be, I don't want to be entangled with that family and his father.
Right.
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 But that's just an idea. My last theory for your next series, and this one is kind of in the middle of out there, but not. I would love to see, you said we are going to get a PR rep and
Yes.
we're going to get some younger siblings. Would love to see a younger sibling we have yet to meet, but I would like to see a daughter of
Mhm.
the original parents with a new hockey player or a coach or
Well, and I will tell you, yeah,
I'm trying to
I
think now who we haven't met.
I know. I had originally, when I had kind of thought it all out, I had originally thought about bringing Brit and sisters, who were all reality stars, and I was actually going to bring one of them to stay with Colby's brother, because that would be like one of the places she could hide. And so it would be like that forced proximity. But then I went and paired Knox with the PR person. So I don't know if I can make that work now. But I was going to bring
But
her in because I thought
because
that would be kind of fun.
it could still work where he rents his room out.
So I
It's
don't know. I
the same.
don't have, like I said,
Yeah.
I think that's like 4 or 5 books. And it's kind of like, I'm like Netflix. I might option for more.
I am still rooting for a soccer player romance. I just really love when they have the same sport and they play against each other.
Yes. Yeah.
Not as much in hockey because it's just I like the tension when they have to share the rink in the hockey
Yeah.
romances. It doesn't quite hit the same though when they play against each other. I don't know why. Because when you imagine like soccer or I'm trying to think of another one that they do it a lot in. I don't know. With soccer, it's the imagery of them like shadowing the plays,
Yeah.
whereas in hockey, it's just aggression.
Well, it is. I don't think I'd want to be out with hockey players. There is some aggression out there. But I don't know. My sons played hockey, and especially the older two. And as they were growing up, there were always like one girl on the team. So, we always saw that there was at least one on the boys' team. And, I think once they all kind of bond, it's like they're very protective of her and stuff. Usually she's tough and that would actually, if I were gonna write, go back to college, that would be kind of interesting.
Or figure skating hockey, where it's a figure skater girl coach, and the coach is sending the player as a punishment. Some type of skill, whether it be flexibility or speed or something. That's always a good one too.
Yeah.
I don't know though. We haven't really met a lot of figure skater girls, and you just did one.
Ava and Hayes. Yeah.
Cough, cough, Olympic teammate. I think I may end my theories there before I start getting way out of hand. Before we go, how does it feel to wrap up, the first true second generation series that you've written?
You know what? I loved this series, and for each book, I really kind of challenged myself to like, I have like now 32 or 33 full-length novels, and then like a handful of novellas. And for this series, I really went into it thinking, what new twists can we do? And I really, really loved like everything, like the bucket list for, the first one, and the Truth or Dare and ex step siblings for the second, and the Romeo Juliet vibes for the third book, and the reality star in hiding and the Vegas wedding. That was totally like um nothing I had ever written. And then for Ava and Hayes, I had never done a figure skater and I had never done kind of like that stalker thing. And then for this one, it was, really hate, hate. And that whole secret messages and then the secret identity, which like my favorite tropes, enemies to lovers, he falls first, secret identity, and fake dating. Like those are my favorites. And I really covered all of those in this book. But it's sad. It's really like it felt like the end, so it wasn't like I dabbled thinking, okay, should we end with Steele? We could bring him in, but 7 books felt like a good number. I mean, even then it was kind of like, for someone who's coming into the series or a new reader for me, then they might be like 7 books. That's a lot. It's a lot to commit to. And then when you see that I have like 30 books in my everything in my catalog, it's kind of like that's a lot. So I just felt like it was a really good way to end. It tied up the series nicely. So, I mean, I feel good about it. I'm a little sad because, I've done um new adult for 10 years. So to move on to kind of the same genre, but older adult or older characters, you know, I feel like I'm still bringing a lot of the characters we've already met with me. There will be cameos by the Wildcats, obviously, we're going to see Bridger and Holland in the first book, and the second book will be River's book. So I will bring Maverick and Willow, and we will see them in the future. And I can't remember. I think the third book is Oliver's book. So, we will see Hayes and Ava, and that's when his sister's going to be crashing onto the scene. So we will see her. So it will be fun to bring some of those characters with me for everyone to see. So I'm excited and I'm a little sad to say goodbye because I feel like I really knew this world and it was easy to write in, and it was fun to also bring the campus players, some of them in, like with Willow, she was friends with Elle, and I really loved that, like their friendship. Now it's like I have to create like all new places, like no more slap shots, no more roasted bean, no more the diner, the 50s diner, that was kind of fun. So I have to like all the things. So that's where we're at. So I'm happy, but I'm a little sad.
I'm excited to see this new professional hockey realm that you're going to create. And I can't wait to see what hangout you think up because all of them have had such great, you know, the watering holes have been,
Yes.
of course, in college, everyone has that one. Every campus has that one.
Yes. Yes.
So opening up to the professional level in a big city is going to just, you know, give so much more options. And I can't
Well,
wait to see how you choose to do it. If you go wild and have it like be a big ritzy club or more like a hole in the wall that you would walk past because you're like, I don't think that's safe.
I will tell you, one of the places is a hole in the wall where the players like hang out after the games. That is a hole in the wall. But there's also going to be another place that the girls go to. So that to me is kind of fun to have like these girls already have like, for the most part are friends. I love like the little girl gang that we have going on, and the personalities, everyone's kind of different. So it will be fun. It'll be fun and it's exciting, and I can't wait for people to delve into. And it's like I am thinking about like ways that we are like I'm going to start introducing things. So I'm not sure if there's going to be like maybe a prequel that people will have before we actually get into the first story. Um, I've been thinking, just have like, there's like, it's almost like never your girl. It's like I've got all these ideas and all these things that we have to like. And it's like, okay, I really actually just need the big whiteboard so I can be drawing and linking and all this stuff. So right now I feel like my brain, especially coming off Never Your Girl, that was not a light, easy book to write. It felt like when it was done, I was like, oh, that was exhausting. And that's how I feel right now because it's like all these ideas and what are we going to do? And so it's just a lot. But I think you'll start having more information like June and July. And the book comes out on August 1st on Amazon and it will release earlier on my store. But I'm excited that this series will have the audio and the ebook and the print out on the same day.
My last question is, where can we see you this remaining part of 2025?
I will be in Chicago next month for Wild and Windy and Seattle a couple weeks after that. And I'm going to London for Rare in July. And then I forgot Indianapolis in June for HEA. And then Southern Bells in Austin, Texas. I think it is Violet Crown. So that's where I am. I have maybe five, I think, for the rest of this year. And then I have six signings that I'm going to for next year. So it's busy. This is the first year I've actually been like, okay, when we have a week with signings, we are no writing so that I can like I don't overbook my time and get off track, especially when you are trying to do audio and the ebook together, because you have to get it to like editing really almost 2 months from when it gets turned over to the production company. So that has been a challenge. And I'm excited to say that Never Your Girl is being produced by Lyric and it's being produced in duet.
Yes. I can't
And
wait.
that's my first duet. I have done duo, but this is my first duet. So I'm so excited to see what they do.
I'm excited for that. And thank you for joining me tonight and chatting about Never Your Girl, things to come, maybe a little bit of things that have already came and people we might see again. Um, it's always a pleasure chatting with you, Jennifer, and I cannot wait to see how well this book does and then how well the audiobook does when it comes out
Yes.
because
I'm
books are
excited. Thanks for having me. It's always great to chat with you.